everyone. Welcome. My name is Robin Perla. I'm the program director of the Master's Programs in Emergent Media at Champlain College, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's Reckless Ideas lecture. Reckless Ideas is the brainchild of Juniper Lovato. Where are you, Juniper? Oh, there, you're right there. From the UVM Complex Systems Center, and Chris Thompson, executive director of Generator, as a place for art, design, technology, and science to collide. This year, I have had the honor of joining them as a co-conspirator and planner. So thank you both for welcoming the Emergent Media program to this rabble-rousing group of people. So the Reckless Ideas is an opportunity for us to shine a light on creativity and, I guess, recklessness of the great minds that are here, right here in Burlington and in our local area. So the wonderful thing about the community we live in is we don't have to look far to find people who are doing work kind of on the cutting edge of the intersection between art, technology, design, and science. And tonight's speaker, Paul, as most of you would agree, is a really great fit for that model. Before I tell you about Paul Budnitz, I want to first officially welcome you to Generator, if you haven't been here before. We're so lucky to have this community makerspace here in Burlington, Vermont. If you didn't get a chance to walk around, make sure you do before you leave. There's so many tools and so many great artists and technicians and designers who are working here. And then also to this room, which is kind of in Generator, but part and kind of emblematic of a new partnership between Champlain College and Generator. So Champlain College, our makerspace has merged with Generator, and this space we're currently calling the Student Flex Space, to be given a more permanent name sometime in the next year. In the spirit of iterative design, we didn't want to name it too fast. This room it's awesome to have it, that we can use it for community events in partnership with Generator, but also it's a place where our students at Champlain College can make and design amazing things. We're cultivating our future Reckless Idea speaker series lineup right in this room, which is awesome. So I also want to make sure to thank the City of Burlington Mayor's Office for sponsoring this speaker series, which allows us to keep it free and available to everyone. So thank you to the City of Burlington. It's fantastic. Paul Budnitz, here with us tonight, is an American artist, designer, and entrepreneur. His most recent creative endeavor is Superplastic, an art toy and accessory company founded on the principle that effort and scarcity are intrinsic components of value. I particularly liked this quote from the Superplastic website. They write, "We appropriate the tools of mass media and mass production to create limited edition works of art for a limited audience. Producing everything in small runs means we can afford to take risks and to make unique things that our fans and customers love." I think that quote speaks nicely to Paul's career as a serial entrepreneur. In his extensive career, he's been a filmmaker and a hardware hacker. In fact, he made the first feature film to be edited on a home computer, an achievement which was chronicled in Wired magazine in 1997. He's a bicycle maker, a social network co-founder, and of course, an art toy designer. He's also written several books and founded over a dozen businesses, hence the career as a serial entrepreneur. His bio made a big point to state that he wears a men's size 13 shoes. As a point of reference, I wear size 5. Anyway, with that, you're here to hear from Paul, not me, so I'll hand the mic over. Welcome, Paul.
Hey. Awesome. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. It's most terrifying to talk in one's hometown. Like, it's when I'm doing a talk in New York or something, it's great, because if I totally blow it, I never have to see any of the people again. But So this talk, Elliot and Chris and other awesome people invited me to do this talk, and it was sort of trying to think about what I want to talk about, and this kind of comes from this comment that actually someone who works with me said today, and that I've heard over and over from different people. I'm an artist and I'm terrible with money. I'm an artist and I'm broke. I'm an artist and I'm just awful and I hate doing the money side of things. And I kind of thought my career has been so a crisscross of business and money stuff that might be a good subject for a talk, which I've never done before. So I was making this talk up this morning. So we'll see how it goes. And the other thing is that, I'm thinking specifically, I have a really, really good friend who I'm not going to name who works writing plays. And he's an incredible artist. I mean, just like an incredible playwright. And he's the same age as me. I'm 51, and he's broke. And he's resentful and unhappy about it. And I thought also that maybe, so this talk is not going to tell you how to make money. It's not going to tell you how to be good with money. It's a little bit about getting real about money in some ways and about our relationship to it so that we don't, if we end up broke later on in life, we can be overjoyed that we're broke because of the choices we made. And if we end up not broke, but we made a bunch of sacrifices to make that happen, then we can be overjoyed about that too, because they were decisions we made as opposed to like just kind of finding ourselves in one boat or the other. So that's a little bit what this talk is about. So these are it's also sort of about the things that I care a lot about, which is creativity and money. Just something that's about me is like Ryan and I were talking earlier, and Ryan said, "Hey, I bought this new like great DJ kit so I could do DJ something, and they're paying me $100." And I was like, "Yeah, great. So now you can write off the DJ kit." And like so me, right? Like someone else is like, "Yeah, you can play music." I'm like, "Yeah, you can write off the kit." So, and reality, and sort of the nature of reality and how we kind of look at things. So I'm going to start by telling you about me and about kind of the stuff I did, and if any of you have seen these slides before, I'm sorry, but they're recycled. And it just to give you a perspective of why I may be sort of the person to talk about this kind of stuff. So in 1980, I was in junior high school, and all I wanted to do was be basically like in a band. I wanted to be the lead singer of New Order, but I was so terrible, like completely, totally talentless at music. I grew up in a house, actually. My dad had an Al Jolson record, a Country Joe and the Fish album, and John Philip Sousa, like marching band music, and it was the 3 records we had in our house my entire growing up. We had like no music, no art, never went to museum, like unknown to me. So I didn't have like that kind of imbibed in my system, but it turned out that I was really good at computers. This was the first computer I used. I was again in junior high, and it was connected, this was called a teletype machine, for those of you who were born way after these things were invented. And it like put paper out, there was no screen, and it was connected to the mainframe of the University of California, Berkeley, and everything that I tell you that's inaccurate, John Cohn in the back is going to correct me later on, because some of this may be bullshit, but it's a good story. So when I was in junior high, my friend Michael and I used to go to Chinatown in San Francisco, and we used to buy fireworks, which were illegal in California. I lived in Berkeley, California, and we would bring them back and sell them to our friends and make money. This was my first business. And I had the bright idea of computerizing my sales list. So I wrote this little program in assembly, and we like did it on the teletype. And then like the next fucking day, like 3 officers, 3 of them in black suits, showed up at my house. And it turned out that like the mainframe was on loan from the Department of Energy, which takes care of the nuclear bombs for America. And I was suspended and arrested and not expelled only because I was so clever. After that, I went to college. I was supposed to go for physics, but I'd become obsessed with movies, so I ended up switching to an art major and bought a 16mm camera and spent a lot of my 20s shooting 16mm films and traveling along to film festivals. And I was making like I won't even show my friends these movies because they're so boring. It was like super super 90s art movie thing. It was going on like slower than Jim Jarmusch, like way slower. And we didn't have any money, so they're like 5-minute takes of like a wall and someone walking by. So needless to say, I made very little money doing that, and so I started other businesses, and it turned out, and I don't know exactly why, but that I have a knack for business, and a lot of my life has been a struggle between like my love of making stuff and my need to pay for it. And because I was always broke trying to make these movies that I never made any money from, so my friend Sean and I had this idea that we would buy Harley Davidsons in Indiana, and then we would ship them over to, sorry, I have a cold, so if I'm sniffing, you just hear me sniff all the rest of the night. We would buy Harley Davidsons in Indiana, and then we would ship them to France, where they were going for a lot of money. And then we got all set up to do that, and then we realized that you had to do all kinds of mechanical stuff to the Harley, which we didn't know how to do. So, but we did discover we could buy used Levi's all over the US. We were buying like vintage Levi's, vintage like first edition like Air Jordan sneakers, horsehide leather jackets. We were recutting, we had a whole fashion line, we were recutting this stuff, like the crap we'd recut and stuff, and we were selling it in Japan. So I was selling like used Levi's in Japan for like $6,000 a pair. I was buying them for like, 50 cents a pound in the US. And I had like piles of cash in my freezer back in, because all this was cash business. So I had like piles, I did pay my taxes, but I had piles of cash in our freezer. I used it to buy a house. I was like 23. So after that, this was before iPods and digital recorders and stuff. I had this business. We were buying, we were hacking electronics for filmmaking because they still wanted permits to shoot like on the streets of New York City and San Francisco. You could be arrested. They were really enforcing that stuff back then if you showed up with a camera on the street. So we were hacking mini disc players so that we could do early digital audio recording, because mini disc players, they didn't really want you to copy the discs. It was this right protection thing, so we hacked that. And then we found out we could sell those things. So we sold these hacked mini disc players, and we sold mini disc players. I had a company called Mini Disco. While I was trying to make movies, and I was busy making movies, and I had a garage full of like selling stuff, and suddenly I was like selling $10 million worth of stuff a year out of my garage while I was trying to make movies. And this was just like, I'm just trying to like talk about like total, like internal conflict. Like I really want to make art, and then there's all this business stuff happening, and but I keep being good at business, and I'm real crap at art. And like, how's that turning out? So, and then, but I was in New York, and I was working on an animated film that was never made, because my backers chickened out and like got partway through, and they like took the money away. But I was hanging out with street artists. I was hanging out with like Tristan Eaton. This is some of his more recent work, and Phil. Friend Lucas, and a whole bunch of like, I was meeting all these street artists, and I was like the geeky guy who'd never done any of that kind of stuff. Dalek is another one. One of the things this is like a piece by Mist and Tilt that they did maybe 6 or 7 years ago in New York City, and one of the things I love about street artists is that they do this crazy stuff for which they might be arrested, beat up, whatever, and they're not paid for it. I mean, back then, no one was ever paid. Now everyone gets paid. But back then, no one was ever paid. And that kind of dedication, like, I really loved, and I wanted to work with them, and I didn't quite know what to do. And at the same time, excuse my sniffing, in New York City, I had become totally obsessed with retail design. I don't know why, but I love retail design. So I would walk in and out of stores all day long and look at like display cases and walls and how things were hung, like obsessively. Like obsession is going to be another thing that goes through this talk. Like obsessively, just like looking at the same stuff over and over and like figuring out like what makes something precious, like what makes something beautiful, what makes you want to buy a handbag for $10,000. Maybe not you, but somebody buys a handbag for $10,000. What makes that handbag seem like it's worth $10,000? Remember that slide I had about reality? Like, what is the reality that someone is living in that makes that seem, and how do you make things seem valuable, right? And how do you make them seem beautiful? And I just love Prada. I just love like walking in these, I love Pucci in New York City. I used to just spend time in Barney's. And this was before the internet like destroyed a lot of retail. So there was like, you could go to a museum and see an exhibit, but there was way more money going into retail design. And all that money was coming out in like really amazing stuff. So in 2002, I founded Kid Robot. That happened because I was on a trip to Asia, and with my mini disc company, and some of the guys who were working with me also were in Asia, and we started bringing back these toys. And now in Hong Kong, like back then, it was totally weird from the Western point of view. It's no longer weird from a Western point of view, which is interesting. Things have changed. but for adults to collect toys. So adults would collect toys, and there are these things called Toy Cons, where adults would get together and buy vintage G.I. Joes and like old trade Star Wars cards and stuff like that. And these guys, Michael Lau, this is one of his toys, started showing up and making their own toys. And what they would do is they would chop the head off a G.I. Joe, and they would mold new head and mold new hands, and then sew like little tiny like shorts and like sneakers and like little, and it was awesome. And I was like, God, this is so amazing. I have to do this. I'm going to go back to America, and I'm going to start a company that does this. I'm going to make tons of money. It's a totally stupid idea. And anyway, but I just fell in love with these toys. And at the same time, I took a trip to Japan, and ironically, this is like one of like Michael Lau's stuff, like amazing stuff. Ironically, at the same time in Tokyo, there was this company, Bounty Hunter, that had a store. It's like about as big as that table there, and they sold gothic clothing, like black clothing with spikes and the whole thing. And on the side, he was making these like vinyl toys, really like rotocast vinyl toys. This being one of the very first toys he made, and his toys were inspired often by cereal box design, American cereal boxes, because he had grown up next to the Okinawa military base. So like a lot of his stuff is like, so he was taking American cereal, but he was making them evil, right? So he was taking like Frankenberry and making them like really dark and evil, and I thought that was also really brilliant. So I went back to America, and I sold that house I had bought with all the cash in my freezer, and took all the money and sold my mini disc business and took all the money and started this weird business where I was going to make limited edition toys. I was going to make them with street artists and all my hoodlum friends, and then we were going to sell them to adults. And I went out to raise money, and it was a joke. Like I would go in rooms, and then people would like walk out on me and stuff, and it was like the first internet boom was going and ending, and people were laughing at me, and it was impossible to raise money. So I essentially like mortgaged everything, started this company, and it boomed, and it just turned into this kind of giant things. These are Kid Robot toys. This is like the kind of lead character. Kind of one of the interesting things about this character is that, sort of like me, he has an underbite, and it kind of gives him this kind of Mona Lisa smile. So the thing about Kid Robot, like when we were designing this character, was that you couldn't tell if he was like really nice or really evil, depending on what he's holding in his hand. So if he has a flower, he's nice. If he has a crowbar, he's evil. And that sort of in some ways defines a lot of like the kind of toys we made. I mean, if you think about like toys for children, right? I may have a picture of one that's going to come up in here, but I don't know if I do. A toy for children, like Vermont teddy bear, right? A Vermont teddy bear does like one thing. I'm not dissing Vermont teddy bears, but Vermont teddy bears are like cute, that's their thing. Or maybe they're like nice, or maybe they're like friendly. They're like one emotion, because like when you look at little kids, they kind of do one thing at a time. They're like mad, or they're sad, or they're like glad, or whatever, but they do one thing at a time. But as we get older, right, as we mature, we have mixed feelings. So sometimes we're like happy, and sometimes we're kind of sad at the same time. And that is actually the ability to do that as a mark of maturity. Or sometimes like we're in love with the person that we're together with, and we like want to sleep with them, but we fucking hate their guts at the same time. It's a very adult thing, and very natural. So this is a story of Gloomy Bear. So Gloomy Bear is made by Maury Chaks. He's a Japanese artist. And Gloomy Bear is this cute little pink bear, and he's rescued by this little boy named Pity. I don't know why the boy's named Pity, but it's Japan. So the boy's named Pity, and he rescues this little pink bear he finds in the box, and he nurtures the bear, and the bear grows up, and they're best friends, and the bear hangs out in the tree, and they hug each other, and they sleep together, and the whole thing. And then the bear gets old, and he mauls him, and he kills Pity. And this is like the best example ever of like the type of toys we make. So Dunny, this was a platform toy that we created. It's like, it was made sort of like blank toy, and then we gave it to a lot of different artists and amazing people, and they would customize it. This one's done by Cycle. It was an early kind of graffiti-ish one. This one's by Hucky, who is working with me at Superplastic. He's right there. One of the greatest toy artists in the world. It's in the back of the room. You should all bow to him later on at the end. The greatest ever. And this is in the Museum of Modern Art now. kind of cool. Yeah, I got in the Museum of Modern Art, and all my friends who were way talented than me, they didn't get in, but I got in because I did business. That's a lesson for everybody here. This is a toy by Junko Mizuno, nurse, sexy nurse with chainsaw and blood. This is one by Tara McPherson. I don't know what it is, but she's kind of dripping in black. Amazing. Oh yeah, I made a series of toys when I was, right before I left Kid Robot. I sold the company in 2012. I want to announce that I'm not responsible for anything the company does, says, or has done since then. But I created this series of toys where the artists were only allowed to have one color, black. And then they could have one pop color. So this is Tara McPherson did this amazing toy then. This is Ganesh meditating on Boombox by Doze Green, one of the original break dancers from the Rocksteady crew. And Frank Kozik's Smorkin Labbit. The really amazing thing about this toy is, of course, the stubble and the cigarette. Right, cute cigarette, really. But the best thing is the butthole. That's what sells it. If it didn't have the butthole, it wouldn't sell. It's all about the details. It's another note for everybody. This is another one, like Report for Punishment, like Romantic Mood. We made this for a nightclub. I designed a nightclub in Toronto, or part of it. So this was for, and it also has a butthole. Very important. And the really cool things, we made a plush rabbit for Bloomingdale's, actually. It was a big plush rabbit. And they made us take away the cigarette, and so we put a mustache on it. But then we made a rear entry, it was made out of silk. So this is the tech, just so you know how, this also show you how toys are made. This is what it looks like. This is the picture that came from the factory to prove. We got this one to show that it actually worked. It's really good, right? We're like, how does a butthole really work? Like, whatever. This wasn't this then, this was this then. And they were like, yeah, we'll send you a picture. There it is. And we made toys with Louis Vuitton and Prada. This is Hermes. That's Karl Lagerfeld on the end. And these were stores. So we had stores in like every continent. And so this was the Los Angeles, no, it was Miami store. Miami store. And my idea with the Miami store was that all the mannequins were dead. So instead of having mannequins standing up, we put them on these slabs, and they were always dead, or they were hanging from nooses and stuff like that. Or if you didn't have any live mannequins in the store ever. And the store did really badly. So anyway, about the time I was getting burnt out at Kid Robot, and I was leaving, I was like one of these weird people who, before they had bike lanes in New York City, I was essentially riding a bike everywhere. It was how I got around. And I didn't own a car for 18 years. So I sort of became obsessed for a little while with bicycles and decided I wanted to have my own bikes made. So what I did was I went around to all these different amazing bike designers with some drawings. Well, actually, what I did before that was I visited every bicycle. This is the obsession note. I visited every bicycle shop in New York City over and over, and I would test ride every bicycle in every shop. And I would take a protractor with me, and I would take a tape measure with me, and I would measure like frame angles and seat widths and like stem heights, but I didn't even know what the things were called. I was like, what's that thing called? And the guy would go, it's a crank. I'm like, yeah, it's a crank. Cool. And I would measure that, and I would just go, and I would never buy anything. So after a while, I'd sort of get banned from these shops. Like I couldn't go in anymore because I had test rode all their bikes, but I never bought a thing. And then I would go to these bike builders after a while and have frames made. So I had them build frames for me based on these drawings and designs I had, and like pictures of stuff. And we ended up like creating Budnitz bicycles. And there's Hunt back there who runs the company. And he's the greatest bike maker in the world also. So we have the greatest bike maker in the world and the greatest toy person in the world right there in that corner of the room. And I started this bike company based on these bike designs. And the way I started the company is this is the model number 3, and it's titanium. It's really an amazing bike. Like, has a belt, doesn't have a chain, has these really narrow top tubes that flex a little bit to create a comfortable ride. My whole thing was like, why is everyone like on these drop bars and the handlebars really low, and how painful that is, and how great it would be to have the ultimate city bike. So that's what these things were. So I had 2 bikes. After a bunch of prototypes that failed, I had 2 amazing bikes that I was riding around, and what I did was I created a website, put pictures of my 2 bikes on it, and just put the word sold out on the bottom. But there's only bikes I had. And then got picked up by Cool Hunting and then a bunch of other people. And then suddenly, like, we had like a year's worth of orders, and Jay-Z ordered 6 and stuff like that. So then we had to figure out how to make a company. And that's how that company started. It's now 7 or 8 years old, which is great. These are like some of the amazing bikes. They're so beautiful. There's these amazing bikes we sell. There's like a step-through version. Yeah, and there's the belt. So no grease, no oil. Like bikes, right? Normal bikes, they have like the transmission on the outside. They have these derailleurs and oil and grease. It's like driving around with the engine on the outside of your car. Stupid idea. So we use belts, and then we use internal hubs, so everything's contained. You can like leave our bikes out in the rain for like a year, and like nothing happens to them because they're titanium and nothing rusts. So then after that, I'd been obsessed with how much I hated Facebook. And so this was old Facebook at the time I hated it so much. And so a bunch of my friends and I got together and decided to create a private social network for ourselves, just so we could share artwork and stuff. So we put all that together. Someone gave me a little money because they thought it was a good idea. So we got it together, and I wrote a manifesto about like how you're totally being, like you're a product. If you use, like you're the product that's being bought and sold, right? Use a social network. Like what's being bought and sold? Who's the customer's social network? The advertiser, not you. Who's the product? You're the product. Isn't that fucked up? They're selling you. So I thought that was evil. So I started a social network called Ello, and it was totally an ad-free social network made primarily for designers. Over a course of 2 to 3 weeks, it totally blew up. We had like millions of people trying to join this network, and it totally didn't work. Like, it didn't work at all. Like, you couldn't follow anyone, and you couldn't log in. Anyone who ever joined, some people in this room may have joined and realized that it didn't work at the time, and so we had like millions of people joining all over the world. We were trending. We were in like the New Yorker. We were on like the New York Times. I was interviewed by everybody in the world, and the whole thing didn't work. And so someone gave us $11 million. That was rad. To make it work. And then I spent 2 years as CEO making it work, and then my partners were in Denver, and I didn't want to leave Vermont, so some of my friends took over, and I left, and it's still running, and it's awesome, and it's there, and it's incredibly beautiful, and it's a place where you can put up giant images of your stuff and share them and things like that. There's no image size limit and stuff like that, and there are no ads. It's ad-free. So. Right when I left, then I had become equally obsessed with chat apps, so I created this app called Woo, which was a really simple way to communicate and chat back and forth. Woo was a total failure, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it was really beautiful. Okay, May of this year, we launched Superplastic. Superplastic is, it started out looking a lot like Kid Robot. It started out looking like a toy company. We're making these totally fucking amazing toys. But really, we have a secret plan. It's not really secret anymore, so I can tell you. You don't have to edit this out, but it was secret until recently. We're not really making another toy kind of streetwear company. What we're doing is, we're making all these characters. We are making toys. But they're just sort of an excuse because they're awesome. What we're really doing is we're making these characters, then we're animating them in 3D, but then putting them in the real world. Like there could be one sitting right there in that empty seat, right? But you would only see it on Instagram. Then we take a picture of it. Then we 3D model it, and then render it, and then put it on Instagram. And then we turn these characters into celebrities. We haven't done this yet, but we're doing it. We're in the process. And we make them celebrities. And then we can do cartoons, and I can make movies again. We can make movies, and then we can make more toys and all that kind of stuff. And so what this character, this toy is called, this is the fashion horror Super Janky. This is Janky is sort of the shape that we make, but it was customized by this artist named Googieman. Googieman is, if you Google Googieman, or if you go to Googieman's Instagram page, you'll find that Googieman has like 100,000 followers, a little bit less, and is like totally obsessed. A little like Banksy is like kind of one post, but you can go to his Tumblr page, and he's obsessed with like axes and handbags and fashion and horror, and he's a hip-hop star, and he designed the first album cover for the Two Live Crew. Anyone remember the Two Live Crew? He's a really famous, anyways, totally famous like artist, and there are all these websites that will tell you that, but in reality, God, you gotta turn this off again. Can you turn that off? Okay, no, it's okay. Just edit it out. Can I tell people? Okay, I'm gonna stop. So, Googie Man is awesome. So we're gonna skip this, but in 2 or 3 weeks, I won't tell you, but 2 or 3 weeks, watch the Super Plastic page. Okay, right, good, you stopped me. This is Hench. Hench is another one of our awesome animated characters. He came from a trans-dimensional portal and was discovered in Alaska, and now he's the driver for Maximilian Cash, who owns Los Angeles and is like a rave star. So we have all these characters. They're gonna be live. Our clothing is already becoming popular-ish. This is the DJ Who Kid, like wearing super plastic clothing, so the whole thing's happening. Like I've been saying, like I'm building the next Marvel, but we're marketing it like Supreme. That's the idea. I just thought you guys would like to see this video of Janky throwing up Jankies. Here, I'll do it again. Okay, there you go. Okay, so last month, that was our balance on our bank account, negative $28,000. So, which I didn't really quite tell everyone at work that was working with me, but Hux and everyone saw me walking around totally panicked. So I had to go out and raise money. And so this is where, and I did, I raised a lot of money. I mean, not a lot of money, but a lot of money for us to do this whole plan. So we have a company now in Burlington, and we have the most incredible, we have 3D animators and 3D rendering and just amazing artists and everyone on staff, and some of them are here, and we're building this like totally awesome thing. We're building the next Marvel, and if I'm being kind of silly here when I'm talking, like I'm serious, this is gonna be $1 billion company, it's totally awesome. Like what we're doing is like gonna blow everything else away, but we were broke. So I went out to raise money. And in the process, anyone who's raised money for a business knows that one of the first things you do is you go and you talk to rich people. Now this is getting to the second half, the whole reality part where we're talking about money. So that was all about me. Now I'm gonna talk about money stuff, okay? So I was hanging out with all these rich people, and I was talking to people in California, right? And these are rich people who are really fucking rich. Like people who like founded PayPal and shit. Like people with billions of dollars. People with so much money that it doesn't pay them to like pick up money they've left on the ground. They don't think about money anymore. Like money is like not an issue in their lives, and there are more of them than you know. And they have so much money because when we were in recession, what happened was President Obama and the Fed decided to print a bunch of money, and all that money went to the banks. And then all that money that was in the banks went to a bunch of rich people. And a lot of them started internet companies, and other ones were rich for other people, and it just concentrated. It didn't get to anyone else. It just went to them, and they have so much money. Like if you don't hang out with these people, you don't know. They have all that money. In fact, in 2007, there were 1/3 as many dollars in circulation as there are now. So there are 3 times as many dollars. Do we have 3 times as many dollars? Fuck no. They have all the 3 times of all the dollars. They're in the rich people's pockets. And they have a very specific reality in which they live in. And that's why I'm going to be talking about that reality. And the interesting thing is that when you go out to raise money, there are some super rich people and they give you money. And then there's some kind of rich people who want to become super rich. Yeah, I had an exit. An exit is when you sell your company for $100 million. I'm looking for my next billion. That's the thing. So then you start talking to them, and they have their own reality. And then you have like some not at all rich people who really like want to become the really rich people. And then you go to San Francisco and you end up like in Oakland, right? And there are really fucking poor people in Oakland living under the freeway. And there are tens of thousands of them. And while these other people are driving around in Teslas, and it's just really weird. This is not a judgment thing. It's just really, really, really weird going from one world, to the other. And it made me think about, well, here's me, I think. Oh, that's an emoji. Damn, this isn't gonna work because you don't have emojis on your computer. That's a smiley of me on there. So somewhere on this continuum of really fucking rich and really fucking poor is me, right? And then somewhere else, some of the emojis are coming up, are all my friends. And I have friends that are like really rich now, like incredibly wealthy people, and I have some friends who are really like totally incredibly broke people, and I have friends that are everything in between. And one of the interesting things that was happening to me, and like my friend Ryan here, I would like come back from like one of these trips like completely bugged out, because I would be like hanging out with people who, let's say I was hanging out with a group of people that are like super wealthy, and I was like having dinner with them. And one of the weird things about, this is specifically about money, it's about a lot of other stuff too, is that when you're hanging around people, let's say they have a lot of money, they project their reality on you. It's almost like this forceful, aggressive thing, right? Like they've got a reality in which like certain things are okay and certain other things are okay, and they all agree on it, but they don't talk that they all agree on it. They just all agree on it, and they want you to participate in that and understand. They don't even think it's subconscious. And then you go I hang out with a bunch of my, let's say, artist friends or social worker friends who are vastly underpaid for the awesome work they do, or school teacher friends, God, who are paid so little for the awesome work they do. And they also have their own reality. There's no criticism also, but there's just like, and their reality about what's okay and like what's not okay. So like I have some examples, I think, yeah, this is reality. So some examples, right? So like only an asshole would drive a car like that, right? Or that car is really fucking awesome. And in certain groups of people, like that is just like, it's like an unquestioned reality. Here's another one. Only a shithead would own a house like this. This is like a house in Montana, it's called a 2x4x20. 2 people, 4 weeks a year, 20,000 square feet, right? Montana. Only a shithead would own a house like that, an asshole. Or, of course they own a house like that. That's amazing. So it just kind of depends on who you're with. I think I have one yet. Yeah, fuck yes. I am going to wear a 1,700 pair of Yeezy Boost sneakers because they're amazing, or I wouldn't be caught dead. And like all these things, like I think we don't really realize all the time the level of agreement we have in the people we hang out with around sort of economically related stuff. But that reality, like the reality that we live in around money, in some ways often defines how much money we end up with, and also sort of how we react to our lives around the context of money. And so I just like, this is an example. So like, you know, it's like there's like this reality, and we think that we're in this reality. This is what would happen to me, because I'd be like bugging out, because I'd go out and hang out with like certain group of people that all had like one, and then I would come back and I'd hang out with another group of friends, and I was starting to like freak out, and it was like as if these two realities were like kind of superimposed on one another, but they weren't matching up quite. And so this is one thesis, right? If you're rich, you're probably cheated or got lucky, right? And if you're poor, you're being exploited by an unfair system, which we can agree with. And that's totally fucking true. Totally and completely true. If you're rich, it's because you chose to be rich. And if you're poor, it's because you chose not to be rich. And this is also true, right? That's also true. There is some truth to it. The second one sounds a lot like Henry Ford or something. But there is some truth to like how, sort of like almost the reality context we're living in like how and where we put ourselves. And so like here's this, I told, I think John Cohn, when we talked that I was going to do this presentation with all these lines and arrows, and this is the line and arrow part. So here's a continuum. You aren't rich, not your fault, your fault, right? So, and this was supposed to be a smiley on there, so that's like somewhere on there, there's a smiley. So, and this is kind of interesting, just there's nothing to do with this talk, except that like traditionally, Democrats believe that it's not your fault that you aren't rich, and Republicans believe that it's your fault that you're not rich. That used to be true. It's gotten a little fucked up lately, but that was like there's kind of a thesis going with that. So I want to propose that instead of a continuum, remember like everyone's disagreeing and fighting, so instead of a continuum where we think it's either totally your fault or totally not your fault, and instead of like a compromise, that we could actually say that, like kind of take a look at the situation and say, both things are true at the same time. So it is both totally not your fault if you're broke, and it is totally your fault that you're broke. Then and that we can kind of consider both things like being truthful simultaneously. You kind of go with me with this. So this is like this friend of mine who's like a Zen Buddhist master who kind of made this chart, and I was thinking about it. But so the idea is that you take two things that are true that are mutually incompatible, right? And as opposed to spending our lives going back and forth on this horizontal line, we can actually live like the apex is something that transcends and includes those other things. So transcends means it goes beyond it, but it includes them. It does not deny them. So you've got kind of both things at the same time going on. This does come back to money eventually, right? So here's another one. Like, life is fair, because it is. Life is really fair. If you fuck off too much, you are fucked. That's fair. But on the other hand, it's totally unfair, because obviously, like, you're just a victim of your circumstances a lot of the time, and both things are kind of true at the same time. And if you get stuck going back and forth, it gets really confusing, and you don't actually know how to take responsibility for your life. But if you kind of sit at the apex where you can hold both things at once, it actually is a pretty powerful way to live. Here's another one. I'm a moron and I'm a genius, right? So sometimes I feel like I'm a complete fucking moron, sometimes I think I'm a genius. And I can flip back and forth, and I spent a lot of my time in the old days going back and forth feeling like I was like really dumb, and sometimes feeling I did something really bad, great, and I go back and forth, and I finally realized that maybe I can be both things. So, I'm an artist and I'm terrible with money, so we're back to that again. Okay, so this is gonna be the end of my talk. I told you I'm not gonna help you make money, but this is just the things I've been thinking about, so answer these questions and then get over it so that you can get old, if you aren't already, and then if you are, then you should be proud. But you can get old and you can be proud of like your relationship of what you decided to do with money in your life. So one, do you really want to make money more than anything else? I think that's a really important question. Like in Citizen Kane, one of the things he says is, it's no trick to make money if all you want to do is make money. So if all you want to do is make money, go out and make money, you can probably make money. Life isn't fair, but you'll have a better chance of doing it. Second question, how much are you willing to sacrifice to make money? Are you willing to sacrifice including being an artist to make money? Are you? And to what degree? And the third one is, how much is enough? And I think that last question is the most important thing, and the question that our society isn't really asking much right now. How much is really enough for you? And that's my talk. Thank you. Oh yeah. So Ryan's going to interview me, or he's going to be moderate, not interview. He's going to moderate questions.
It's a Q&A, right?
It's a Q&A. Yeah.
So whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that mic there, do you want another mic?
I don't know.
No, we can take one mic. I don't need to talk.
Okay.
This is Paul. I met, by way of a quick introduction, I met Paul. I was hosting a Vermont PBS show called Making Friends with Ryan Miller. John Cohn I met, and we are dear friends now, and Paul is one of my greatest friends of all time. And he told me he was doing this, and we were together, and he said, do you want to help? And I said, yeah, I don't know what I can do, but can I bring a puppet? So I brought a puppet. That might get tiresome, so I probably will just grab it. And I don't think I'm going to talk much. In fact, you could probably do all this by yourself. You've been a very competent orator so far. But I'll grab a puppet, and then I can moderate in some capacity. So as I grab my puppet, does everybody think of some questions that they'd like? And I can facilitate in whatever way I can. Any questions at all so far?
Your last slide there, so your last slide there, how much is enough? There was a book written about maybe 25, 30 years ago called Your Money or Your Life. And that was like the central question in that book. And at the time I was in a small men's group, and one of the things we did, other than, try to bond with each other, is talk about money, because we were all wondering about that. And that book was pretty profound. That question was really pretty profound to ask, because there's an assumption that more is better, and that's not necessarily true. Like, how much is enough? And I answered that question by getting enough and then becoming more of a philanthropist, and that was a real pleasure to be able to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Are there any questions at all? Oh, yeah. Yes.
When do you think you should give up on doing toy design? Like, if you have a great idea for, like, say, the Dunnies and Monies and whatnot, when do you think you should give up on that idea or persevere that idea? What do you think the time frame for that would be?
Right. Is this a question for me, or is it about a hypothetical person like you? Oh, great. Like as a businessman and artist. That's a good question. So, remember the triangle? So I'm going to answer from both things, and they may not be compatible. So on the creative side, on the money side, so when I start a business or a venture or a part of a venture, I'm going to back up even further to say that everybody who works with me knows that I'm completely neurotic and paranoid, like totally neurotic, like crazy, like worried about everything all the time. And so I do the stupid test. And before I do anything, the stupid test is I do a spreadsheet and just see like if it's so fucking stupid, like I shouldn't do it because I'm just going to lose money and it's not going to work. So on the business side, one should quit when one isn't going to make more money. And it's not a black and white thing, because you can make a lot of money now by, let's say, blowing something out and destroying a brand, right? So you got a brand, you got followers, and people love you, and then you just like do something for Pepsi or for Samsung, and you're ruined for life. Like the brand's dead. So sometimes you have to think long term, but you stop doing it when it's not making money more. On the creative side, you stop when it's not feeding your soul anymore. Because when it's not feeding your soul anymore, you're not going to keep doing good work. And then for me, I have tended to, when I am no longer of use to a company like Ello, or when I'm burnt out like Kid Robot and I feel like I'm not doing great work anymore, then I will I will leave and find someone responsibly who can do a better job than me. So that's the answer. Yeah.
I've seen in your career that there have been a lot of permutations, and would you say there have been failures? I mean, it seems like some things have failed. So as an artist who's put everything that they can into every iteration, how do you not internalize your failures, and what well do you draw upon to persevere and have the audacity and ego to create something else sitting on like a pile of rubble?
Right, that's a good question. So how do we deal with failure? So yes, a significant percentage of the stuff that I've done doesn't always work out. And some of it gets terminated pretty early, some of it gets terminated after several years of really hard work. I mean, so on the one hand, I would say that I actually really like, there's the path and the goal thing, the path and the goal. I love the path. I just like making stuff. I enjoy it, so that is renewing in and of itself. And at the same time, like, sometimes it is just incredibly painful and awful. Like, we just completely, totally fail, and the thing we're making is definitely not working, and it's totally depressing, and we feel like failures, and we can't see how we're ever going to do anything good again. And we don't know, because creativity doesn't come from a dependable well, so you don't know. So there's faith. Partly there's faith that we're going to go and make something else great, and partly there's just the resilience to know that disappointment is sort of part of the path. It just has to be. So I don't know. I have that built into me. I eventually just get up, but I know I get up and do other stuff. Oh yes, yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yes.
I can actually speak. Hi. So the Kid Robot, I love those, by the way. But so you chose to go with limited editions. Can you expand a little bit on your thoughts of the value of scarcity of a product?
Yeah, so question about scarcity. So if you make If you make something that you want to sell, let's say your goal is to sell 10 million of, right? You've got to make something that's going to appeal to 10 million people, which can be awesome, but isn't always. If you make something and you make a run of something, let's say you make only 100 of them, you only have to find 100 people to like it. Like, everyone else can hate it, but if those 100 people like it and you sell out, then you're successful. So that's one reason to do limited edition, because you're allowed to do greater risk. The other is that we live in a culture now where you can get everything instantly or within 2-day delivery, right? So you can get every video you ever wanted, you can get all the music you ever wanted, you can get everything you ever wanted delivered 2 days. And it's pretty interesting where we're discovering with our new company that actually scarcity creates value. People are hungry for things that they can't get. Like, it's exciting not to be able to get things and to have to wait for them. The waiting is part of the experience. And when you have to wait for something, you have to wait in line for something, you have to wait time for something, whatever it is, we create objective, not subjective, but I believe we create objective value in that thing, and we keep it for the rest of our lives because there's a story and memory and a bit of work that went into getting it, and so it becomes part of us. And that's why, one-of-a-kind art, like the amazing paintings that Peter does, like, you see those paintings, there's just only one of them. He only has to find one person that likes that painting. And yet, like, the person who finds that painting, and especially if you spend a lot of money for it, that's real value. It's not like just a weird subjective thing. I want to take one thing to announce, that we are hiring at Superplastic 3D modeler, 3D renderer, 3D animator, like a 3D generalist. If there's anyone who knows anyone who's really awesome or is great, then talk to me after the talk, and I would love to talk to you because we're hiring for a position right now. Yes, in the very back.
So throughout your talks, you're talking about the companies you're a part of, and you would often say, and my friends, and I'm going to do this thing. So what makes, like, there are good friends, there are bad friends, and there's the apex friend. What is that apex friend that's helping you all around?
Great, so like the question was, I'm always saying me and my friends are doing this thing or whatever, and so what's the apex friend? Boy, that's a hard question. I think so this is the weird apex around friendship and work, right? So on one hand, we love people and we love ourselves, and we ought to be working at the job because we love them and we adore them and we know they're wonderful, great, talented people. And the other end of the spectrum is in a capitalist economy, you can't keep anyone that's not useful for an hour longer because you cannot afford it. Especially at a company like this. There is no room for waste. I mean, that's why, this is the fucked up thing about technology, because you often don't see it, but the reason why the average income hasn't gone up for working people is because technology is kind of looking and seeing how much we're willing to take before we're going to quit, and how painful it can be, and how much money we really need, and it's not going to give us any more. Like, your Comcast bill is totally optimized for how much you will pay. Like, they've got millions of samples. Here's another example. Ads on Facebook. This is really interesting, but this goes back to the friend thing. It does. Ads on Facebook. Fascinating thing about ads on Facebook is that, like, if you go on Facebook and you never leave, and they show you, the more you use Facebook, the more ads they'll show you, because they know they've got you. So, like, you're going to keep using it. But if you go to Facebook and they show you some ads and you just bug off, the next time you come, there are no ads. So it's like kind of like they're measuring your tolerance for just how horrible an experience you're willing to have before you leave. That's what a lot of the technology is. It's the least horrible experience a computer can give you. Friends. But it's the same thing with friends. It's like, so the apex for business is, I love the people I work with. I'm incredibly picky about community and the things we do. We're with each other all the time, the whole thing. I fall in love with the people I work with, and the minute that they no longer work for the company, I'm not liking really the minute, because we are tolerant and we give people chances and we train people and the whole thing. But at some point, slow to hire, quick to fire, you got to let them go even if you love them. Where does that, there's a continuum, and the apex holds both things at the same time. So there you go, work and friends. Yes?
All right, so I'm curious. A lot of young entrepreneurs are really told to go out and kind of survey their market, really understand
Right, so did everyone hear that? Should I repeat it? Anyone not hear that? Okay. Whew. It's just really the same thing. It's a combination of both. So on the one hand, if you just go out and market test, it depends how big your market is. If your market is 5 people, that's rad. You can go on a market test. So let's say you said, I'm going to be a sculptor. I'm going to sculpt from passion only. I'm just going to go, what comes out of me no matter what, and I'm going to sculpt that. And I build these sculptures. And then, like, no one buys your sculptures. We shouldn't be fucking surprised, because you didn't think about anyone else but yourself, really. In a way, it's fundamentally selfish, I think. But there are some people who just happen to be wired, and they just, out of their center comes this beautiful stuff, and they don't think about the audience, and those people are lucky, but I'm not talking about them. One second, John. Okay, so that's one side. But actually, at the same time, like, there's inspiration, right? There's like, a lot of like what I do, I don't do market surveys. Like, you can't create anything new by actually asking people what they want. I mean, Steve Jobs said something like that. You have to actually use the magic of being an artist, of being creative, of just coming up with stuff. So this is the other side of it, right? So the other side of it is we need to be inspired. We need to come out of, like, it has to come out of magic and inspiration, or else we're just, I mean, if your business is, you just want to do a business that's just like, what, you know, you want to open one of those restaurants that has like hamburgers and salmon, and has kind of like wood stuff on the wall, you know, and they like the chalkboard with the menu. No problem. But if you want to create something really new, you got to take a risk, and the risk comes out of like the same inspiration that comes from an artist. So it's really a balance of those things. I personally think a lot about, is someone going to think this is awesome? Is this awesome? But the awesome feeling comes from the inside me. I just know it, if that's inspired. But I do think a lot about audience, because, yeah, John, go. Oh, no, I'm done.
But you hit on risk, and I'm like, risk, what's the other triangle between worry and risk tolerance? I mean, I know you worry like crazy.
Yeah.
Technically engineered to do that, but yet you're very risk tolerant. Is risk useful? I mean, worry useful? And how does that work in the process?
Yeah, right, that's a good question. So, like, can we contain the amount, whatever our amount of worry is? I know some people are super cool, I don't worry about anything, definitely not me. Like, but like, is whatever our personal worry thing, is that something we can contain within the narrative of our work? Like, I can contain the amount of worry I have most of the time. I don't sleep very well. I have a terrible sleeping disorder. But most of the time, I can contain the total nervousness and worry within. It's sort of like, it's almost like, it's like someone dies, and you can't believe that someone dies, and you're totally destroyed by it. Or someone dies, and you're totally destroyed by it, but you know that people die. That, you know, it's like, but that's it. It's the same thing. It's kind of built into the expectations of the system that some worry. I don't know if that was the best example, whatever. But yeah, so the question is, can you contain it, whatever your tolerance is? If you've got a low tolerance, you should know it. To me, I can deal with a lot of it. And somehow, to me, it's just built in the system. Yes? Right, so the question was how business owners could determine interest in products, especially if you're making only 100 pieces of something. Okay, first what you do is you do the stupid test. You take the spreadsheet and you go and you say, if I sell only 100 of these, am I still in business? Because you may sell only 100, I'm just not your question, but you may sell under 100 and then it's like starve. So you might as well see if 100, if that's a number that really, whatever it is. But then how can you determine, well, I don't know. I mean, in me, and this is the I don't know part, in me, I just sort of am like excited. I'm so excited about this thing that like all of reality bends around the fact that everyone else is going to love this thing. It's so amazing that everyone's going to love it, and I just know it, and it's like this distortion happens, and then it happens, and then people buy this stupid shit I make. So it's like, you got to believe in it. But then you can do a little market testing too. Then you bring it out, and then a bunch of people say, that's really awful, and you're like, fuck. Yeah. Was that not your question? Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like you have to create a reality in which there are enough people that love that thing, even if you're a painter and you do one thing, or you're a sculptor, and you know your market is the gallery owner right now, or the museum owner, or maybe it's the collector. I don't know. But you have to create a reality where you know, because you've met enough of these people or whatever, that like, or in your market's just generally people, that like, that can be true. You have to know it. And if you don't know it, then you're not an entrepreneur like me. Maybe you're a different kind. There are people that just go out and do spreadsheets, build a hammer, and just do market testing. But that's not my type of thing. So, yeah. Yes?
One of the things that I find so inspiring.
Yeah, and you teach a lot of people to do amazing art. So that's a good, the question is like, that I do all of these different things. I don't know how to phrase. I do a lot of different things. Question. So, my personal sweet spot in business is the starting in the first several years. Just happens like when the company's going, it's just humming along and things are the same all the time. Like you don't want me around because I'm just going to mess things up. So it's good to know who you are, right? And also, but I would just say I don't know. I just like all this different stuff. I get excited and interested in it. And like the bicycle story I told is a true story. Like as Hunt knows, who runs the bike company, Hunt's here somewhere, like basically like I'm clueless about bikes in a certain respect. I haven't spent, there are people who are specialists, like they know about bicycles. They know really, like they know everything about it. They know everything about bicycle grease. They know like every type of bicycle ever made. They're like, they know, but because they've done it their whole life. I'm more like, I'll just go, like just get immersed in something, and I just have confidence that I can learn only the part I need to know to make something really exceptional, because I see and want that exceptional thing. And then that drives me to this thing, and then I just do that because I'm fascinated by it. I don't know why. Yes, Ryan Miller.
So seeing all these disparate things that you've done in your life, can you trace a through line of what the essence of all of these are that is like consistent throughout the multiple lanes that you're in? Like what is the baseline that we can draw from that, or you draw from it?
Right, so that's a good question. So what's the consistent baseline and all the things I can do? Okay, so one arrow over here, right? At some point, I can't remember when it happened. So I studied art, and in my same class in my art school was Matthew Barney. He's like one of the most famous artists in the world. And he was so amazing, like an incredible artist. And I kind of looked at him, I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like I just knew I didn't have that. And about that time, I discovered that for me, you know how like an artist does art stuff and then wants to show it to people and then have people go, God, that's so amazing. That's like an amazing, beautiful thing you did. Or everyone has a different thing. My thing just happens to be that I like to make money. I do. I like to make money. I don't know. It's part of my reward. It just is built into me, right? So, what was that question again? Oh, the through point. You're right. So one through line is that I like to make money. So one through line is this is something I can do to make money, so I'm not broke, because when I got out of high school, I had a problem with authority, and if I would have to get a job, and I didn't want to have a boss. So that was like a massive motivator for me. Okay, so on the other side, this other arrow over here, I just love all these things. Like I love the bicycle thing. I didn't have a car forever and ever and ever, and I had this idea I couldn't find the bike I wanted, so I made it. Or I fell in love with these toys because I'd been reading Tintin and like Asterix and Marvel Comics and independent comics. And I was obsessed by comic books and graffiti art and all this stuff. And that obsession went into the other. So I just loved that stuff. So everything was based on love. But it was also like, but I also really like to make money. So then right in the middle, like how do you encompass both those things? And that's my career. That's just basically like it's a recognition of that thing. That works for me. Yeah. Right. So the question is it hard? It can be hard. It's easier if you've had some success. But I think that there is a thing about raising money. I have a talent for it. It's like a thing. I can't sing, but I can raise money. But I think the thing is, partially, is that thing I was talking about. Like, in my reality, only an idiot wouldn't give me money to make animated characters and put them on Instagram. Like, it's going to be worth $1 billion. Like, can't you see that? You can see that. Yeah. So if you're not giving me your money, you're crazy. And so when I'm in the meeting, like, I believe it. It's not like a thing, like I'm like coming there to con. I'm not conning anybody. I'm like in it. Like, that's the whole thing. And like actually when I had to, on the other hand, it's hard work. I had to talk to like, I had a spreadsheet, like I talked to like 65 people in order to get 25 of them invested. It was amazing. And after a while, I was talking to people, and if I didn't like them when I was like on the phone with this like billionaire, and I didn't like that person, I'd start making my business sound really, really boring. I'd be like, yeah, it might not work, you know, but because I didn't want them. But the people I wanted, I just showed the whole thing, and I was like, nah. And people want to invest in that. But you have to have that like thing. But you have to convince them. And we talked about this when we were together. The hardest thing to convince people is that you have a great idea. I want to just break this to you guys. Like, you've heard this before. This is like the obnoxious like entrepreneur. By the way, I hate entrepreneurs. I hate those guys who stand up and they like made a ton of money and they're like, I'm going to tell you my smart thing. This is my smart thing, and I'm going to tell you it. I hate that. But what I'm going to tell you, this smart thing, anyway, ideas are not worth fucking anything. Like, everything I do is totally public, like the whole time. We don't do non-disclosures because it's my reality thing, no one can do the shit that I can do. Nobody. Except when I'm feeling incredibly depressed and I feel like I'm a total loser. But in the state when I'm not in my manic state, like, nobody can do the shit that we can do, because we're like totally like the most badass people in the world at what we do. And because of that, like, reality bends to that and people believe you. But the hardest thing really is to convince people that you're the one. So you might have a great idea, but if you're not the one, are we out of time?
Maybe one more, if there's one
Yeah.
last burning question.
Last burning question?
Right, nobody's taking this out, we can stay and talk, and there's one last burning question. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go.
Oh, and the mic even? This is exciting. No, I'm just curious about what so you deliberately chose to be in Vermont. That seems like a decision you made personally. What is your experience trying to build this billion-dollar company here and the ecosystem that exists in Burlington?
Right. So the question is, what about being in Vermont? Okay. No, it's an awesome question. So first of all, allow me to say that essentially our company is staffed by graduates of Champlain College. Yeah. And I was saying to Nate, essentially, like, my business plan as the company grows is to hire all these amazing people as they leave Champlain College. That's essentially our entire business plan. Like, we have here the best video game, 3D modeling, whatever you want to call it, I think, curriculum in the country. Maybe like anywhere, because the students that we're hiring, like, they're over the top amazing. So that's amazing. All right, that's a good thing. The other good thing is that salaries are way lower here. Oh, you're laughing. That sounds funny. But the thing is, in San Francisco, I couldn't do this. All right, so let me tell you this also. This is really interesting. When we were doing ELO, right, I was on the phone with people, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm in Vermont. I want you to give me money. And they'd be like, you're in Vermont? I only invest in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York City. Like, maybe Chicago. That's it. Like, I don't invest there. And so I started saying I was from Denver, which helped a little bit. This time around, it was like, first of all, no problem, because the thing I could say which was true is try to do a startup in San Francisco, all right? You can't not retain your employees because the big companies will grab them and pay them. You get a programmer, maybe you can pay them $125,000 a year in San Francisco, and then Google needs more, and they're paying them $180 and getting Google stock. It's like it's all, you cannot, I mean, I've talked to entrepreneurs out there, it's so hard to retain good employees out there. Here, people are like, there's less, I don't know, it's kind of fucked up, but there's less jobs, so it's like good for an entrepreneur. Just saying. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then it's cheaper, and no, yeah, no, the community thing's real. The community thing's real. No, the community thing's real. The community thing's real because like if I just announced we're hiring somebody and probably someone's going to come up and go, you know, yeah, Bernie Sanders is totally rad. Totally rad. But yeah, but I'm serious. But the thing is like the community thing's great because we know each other so we can help each other. And that is super meaningful. The most challenging thing about here is raising money. You can't raise money from here always reliably. I have actually raised a lot of money from here, which has been great. But it is very hard because there just isn't, you know, all that, when I was talking earlier about there's just so much fucking money out there. You cannot believe it. It's not in Vermont. But there's so much money. Like people are like people raise money. This is how it works in Silicon Valley. People raise, like say I'm 23 years old and I raised a $100 million fund, no doubt. Like there are a bunch of these people. They're like 23 years old. I raised a $100 million fund. That means that people gave me $100 million to invest. And I have to deploy that money within a year or two. I have to spend it. They give it to people like me. It's just a great system. We don't have that in Vermont. We don't have that level of just ridiculously too much money floating around. And it is a great thing if you're an entrepreneur. So that is the weakness of being here. But Vermont is otherwise really awesome for all the other reasons. And I would not try to do this anywhere else. There you are.